"Sir, my little brother hasn't eaten in 2 days," little Victoria pleaded, her eyes filled with tears, in front of the upscale restaurant. Businessman James felt something crack inside him. He didn't know that this moment would change their lives forever. The summer heat was stifling on the streets of Toronto that July afternoon. Victoria Smith, a girl barely 10 years old, tucked her matted hair behind her ear as she gathered the courage to approach the entrance of the Metropolitan Grill, the most exclusive eatery downtown. Her bare feet, toughened by months of walking without shoes, no longer felt the scorching pavement. The little girl watched with longing as well-dressed people entered and exited the establishment. The aroma of perfectly seared steak and fresh artisanal bread made her empty stomach ache, but she wasn't there for herself. Her little brother Tommy, barely 4 years old, had been feverish for 2 days and had hardly eaten a bite. Twins Chloe and David, 6 years old, had shared the last stale cracker that morning, and Ethan, 8, had left early to collect empty bottles to sell at the recycling depot. Victoria took a deep breath, clutching the small, worn locket her mother always wore against her chest. She timidly approached the restaurant's entrance. "Not you again, kid. How many times do I have to chase you off?" The security guard, a burly man in a black uniform, advanced menacingly towards her. "You know, mister, O'Malley doesn't want beggars near the business. You scare off customers." "Please, sir," Victoria pleaded, her voice trembling. "It's not for me. My little brother is sick and hasn't eaten anything since yesterday, just a small sandwich or some crackers." The guard didn't let her finish. With a rough shove, he pushed her, causing her to stumble and fall onto her right knee, which instantly began to bleed. "Get lost before I call the police! You beggars! You're a nuisance!" Victoria struggled to her feet, tears silently rolling down her dirty cheeks. She wasn't crying from the physical pain, but from helplessness, from the fear of returning empty-handed to the tiny shelter where her siblings awaited her. At that precise moment, a luxurious black Mercedes G-Wagon pulled up in front of the restaurant. James Anderson, one of Toronto's most successful real estate developers, observed the scene from the driver's seat. He saw the girl fall to the ground, the blood on her knee, the guard's unnecessary cruelty. Something in the little girl's eyes, not fear or pain, but a determination unusual for her age, stirred an unease in him he couldn't explain. James had come to the Metropolitan Grill for an important business lunch. At 38, he owned Anderson Holdings, one of the country's most prosperous development companies. He was about to close a multi-million-dollar deal to develop a new commercial complex in North York. However, as he watched the little girl hobble away, he felt something more important demanding his attention. He handed the keys to the valet and entered the restaurant, where his partners were already waiting. The ambiance was elegant, with contemporary Canadian art on the walls and soft jazz music playing in the background. The aroma of gourmet dishes and fine wines filled the place. "Jim, you finally made it," greeted Robert Campbell, his main partner, rising to shake his hand. "We've already ordered some premium craft beers to start." James sat down, exchanged greetings with everyone, but his mind remained on the street with that girl. While his partners animatedly discussed financial projections and building permits, he constantly glanced towards the window, hoping to see the little girl again. "Are you all right, Jim?" Robert asked, noticing his distraction. "You seem miles away." "Excuse me," James replied, rising abruptly. "I need to attend to something urgent. I'll be back in a few minutes." Without further explanation, he went outside, his gaze searching for the girl. He found her half a block away, sitting at the entrance of a closed shop, trying to clean her injured knee with the hem of her tattered t-shirt. He approached slowly so as not to startle her. "Hello," he said softly, stopping at a prudent distance. "I saw what happened back at the restaurant. Are you okay?" Victoria looked at him with suspicion. Well-dressed men approaching street children rarely meant anything good. "I'm fine, sir," she replied, ready to run if necessary. "Your knee is bleeding," James pointed out. "Let me help you." He crouched down to her level, maintaining a respectful distance. "My name is James. What's your name?" The girl hesitated for a moment. "Victoria," she finally replied. "Victoria, are you hungry? Can I buy you something to eat?" She shook her head. "It's not for me, sir. It's for my little brother, Tommy. He's sick and hasn't eaten anything in 2 days. My mom hasn't come back from work, and we have nothing left at home." James felt a lump in his throat. "Where is your little brother now?" "In our shelter," Victoria replied, "with my other siblings." "It's not far from here." James pulled out his wallet, and Victoria instinctively took a step back. He noticed and raised a hand in a gesture of peace. "I just want to buy food for you and your siblings. Is there a store nearby?" Victoria pointed to a small corner store across the street. 20 minutes later, James was carrying 2 large bags full of bread, milk, canned beans, rice, fruits, and some basic medicines he bought at the pharmacy next door. "Can you take me to your siblings?" he asked. "I want to make sure they get this food." Victoria hesitated. Leading a stranger to their shelter was dangerous, but something in the man's kind eyes inspired trust. Besides, they desperately needed that food. "Okay," she finally agreed, "but it's not a nice place." James nodded. "Don't worry about that." They walked through increasingly narrow and dilapidated streets. The urban landscape of Toronto gradually transformed. The glittering skyscrapers and upscale boutiques gave way to a grittier landscape of aged brick buildings, graffiti-covered walls, and the distant rumble of the subway. Finally, Victoria stopped in front of an abandoned construction site, partially fenced with rusty corrugated iron sheets. There was a small opening in the fence, through which the girl easily slipped. "Through here, sir," she indicated, waiting for James to follow. The businessman had to crouch to get through the narrow gap. What he saw on the other side took his breath away. In a corner of the site, under a stunted tree, they had built a kind of shelter from cardboard, plastic tarps, and some pieces of wood. It couldn't have been more than 4 square meters, and the roof was so low that even the children had to stoop to enter. A boy of about 8 years old came out to meet his sister. It must have been Ethan. He stopped dead upon seeing the stranger. "Who is he?" he asked suspiciously, placing himself protectively in front of his sister. "His name is James," Victoria explained. "He's good, Ethan. He brought food for everyone, and medicine for Tommy." From inside the makeshift shelter emerged 2 identical little faces, the twins, who looked at James with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Chloe, recognizable by her messy pigtails, clung to a one-armed rag doll. David, skinny as a stick, wore a t-shirt so many times mended that it was hard to distinguish the original fabric. "Where's Tommy?" Victoria asked, noticing that the youngest hadn't come out. "He's asleep," Chloe replied in her high-pitched voice. "Still warm." Victoria hurried into the shelter. James remained outside, aware that he was invading the children's privacy. He left the bags on the ground for Ethan, who continued to watch him warily. "Can you check what I brought?" he said to the boy. "It's food for you, and some medicines for your little brother." Ethan began to rummage through the bags, pulling out a bright red apple with astonishment. It had probably been a long time since they had seen fresh fruit. "James!" Victoria's alarmed voice called him from inside the shelter. "Please come. Tommy is very sick." Forgetting formalities, James crouched and entered the improvised home. The interior was dark and suffocating. In a corner, on some cardboard covered with a tattered cloth, lay a small child. His face was flushed with fever, and he was breathing with difficulty. Victoria gently stroked his hair. "He's burning up," she said, distressed, "and he won't wake up." James approached and gently touched the child's forehead. It was scorching. Without thinking twice, he pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "Dr. Dubois, it's James Anderson. I need your urgent help. I'm with a 4-year-old boy with a very high fever and difficulty breathing." He paused, listening to instructions. "Yes, I can send you my location. Please, come as quickly as possible. It's an emergency." While they waited, James helped Victoria give little Tommy the fever medicine he had bought. The twins and Ethan, somewhat more confident now, avidly ate the bread and fruit he had brought them. "Where's your mom?" James asked Victoria, as he dampened a piece of cloth to place on Tommy's forehead. "She cleans houses," the girl replied. "Sometimes she has to stay overnight at the houses where she works, because they're very far. She hasn't been back for 3 days. She's never been gone this long." Her voice broke. "I'm scared something happened to her." James nodded, processing the information. 5 children alone, the youngest gravely ill, their mother missing, living in extremely precarious conditions. It was a situation that required immediate action. "Victoria, I'm going to help you," he said with determination. "First, we'll make sure Tommy gets medical attention. Then we'll look for your mom. You're not alone in this. Do you understand?" The girl looked at him with a mixture of hope and skepticism. "Why are you helping us, sir? You don't even know us." James smiled sadly. "Because someone helped me when I needed it a long time ago, and I promised myself that if I ever found someone who needed help, I wouldn't turn away and go on my way." Before Victoria could respond, they heard a car stop near the site. Moments later, a middle-aged woman with a medical bag made her way through the corrugated iron sheets. "James, where are you?" "Doctor." Dubois called. "Inside, doctor," he replied, grateful for her speed. The doctor entered the shelter, quickly adapting her eyes to the dimness. Without asking questions about the situation, she immediately focused on the sick child. After a thorough examination, her face reflected concern. "He has pneumonia," she diagnosed gravely. "He needs antibiotics immediately and should be hospitalized for IV fluids and medication." "No!" Victoria exclaimed, alarmed. "If we go to the hospital, they'll separate us. Child Protective Services will take my siblings to different foster homes." James immediately understood the girl's fear. Without their mother present, social services would likely intervene. And it was true that the siblings could be separated. "I won't let that happen," he promised. "Doctor, is there any way to treat him without hospitalization?" Dr. Dubois frowned. "It's not ideal, James, but if you can provide a clean, warm place with the necessary medications and constant care, we could try. However, if his condition worsens—" "I understand," James interrupted. He turned to the children who were watching him with anxious expressions. "Trust me, I want to take you all to my home. Tommy will be comfortable there. You'll have hot food and clean beds. And from there, we'll look for your mom." The children looked at each other as if silently consulting. Finally, it was Victoria who answered for everyone. "We trust you, Mr. Anderson." "Good," he nodded. "Then we'll do this. Dr. Dubois will take Victoria, Tommy, and me in her car. Ethan, Chloe, and David will come with me in mine. But first," he pulled out a business card and a pen and wrote something on the back. "We'll leave this note here in case your mom comes back while you're gone. It has my name, my address, and my phone number." With Ethan's help, they secured the card at the entrance of the shelter. Then they gathered the few belongings valuable to the children. Chloe's doll, a small family photo album, and her mother's locket that Victoria guarded as a treasure. As he carried little Tommy in his arms, feeling his small body burning with fever, James Anderson knew his life had changed forever. In just a few hours, he had gone from being a solitary businessman concerned with multi-million-dollar contracts to becoming the temporary protector of 5 homeless children. He didn't know exactly how he was going to handle this unexpected situation, nor what challenges awaited him. But he was sure of one thing. He wouldn't abandon these children. He would give them the opportunity he himself had received when he was a homeless child, before Arthur and Helen Thompson adopted him and changed the course of his destiny. "Let's go home," he said softly, as he guided them towards an uncertain future, but one filled with hope. The first stars began to appear in the Toronto sky as the improvised caravan arrived at the building where James lived. The Lakeshore Tower, with its 30 stories of glass and steel, stood majestically in one of the city's most exclusive areas. The lobby security guard, Mr. Hayes, couldn't hide his surprise when he saw James step out of the Mercedes G-Wagon with 3 disheveled, ragged children. "Good evening, Mr. Anderson," he greeted, trying to maintain his usual professionalism. "Are these children with you?" "That's right, Mr. Hayes," James replied naturally. "They're my special guests. Dr. Dubois is also coming with me. She's bringing 2 other children. Please assist her when she arrives." The guard nodded, still confused, but not daring to ask more questions. It wasn't his place to question the owner of the penthouse. In the exclusive elevator that led directly to James's apartment, the twins watched the illuminated buttons fascinated, while Ethan stayed near the door, as if evaluating possible escape routes. Distrust persisted in their eyes, despite the kindness James had shown them so far. "Do you live here all alone?" David asked, breaking the silence. "Yes," James smiled. "Well, Miss Henderson comes every day to cook and clean, but she leaves in the afternoons." "It's like a castle," Chloe murmured, hugging her rag doll. When the elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse, the children were paralyzed by what they saw. The apartment occupied the entire floor with floor-to-ceiling windows, offering a panoramic view of the city and Lake Ontario. The white marble floor gleamed so brightly that Chloe was afraid to step on it. "Is all this yours?" Ethan asked with poorly disguised astonishment. "Yes, but now it's yours too, at least for a while," James replied. "Come on in, don't be afraid, you must be hungry." Chloe took a cautious step and then stopped, looking at her bare, dirty feet. "I'll make the beautiful floor dirty," she whispered, ashamed. James felt a lump in his throat. He crouched down to the little girl's height. "Don't worry about that, Chloe. The important thing is that you're comfortable. Afterwards, you can bathe and put on clean clothes." The elevator bell announced the arrival of Dr. Dubois with Victoria and little Tommy. The child was still unconscious from the fever, but the medication they had administered was beginning to take effect. "I'll take him to one of the bedrooms," James indicated, taking the little one from the doctor's arms. "Victoria, come with me." You all wait here for a moment." He led Victoria to the main guest bedroom, a spacious suite with 2 queen beds and a full bathroom. Carefully, he placed Tommy on one of the beds. "You'll be comfortable here," he said, as the doctor began to prepare the child's treatment. "There's a bathroom in there with hot water and clean towels." Victoria ran her hand over the spotless white sheets. "They're so soft," she murmured, almost to herself. Then she looked up at James. "Thank you, sir. No one has been this kind to us since we lost our home." James wanted to ask more about that story, but Dr. Dubois interrupted. "James, I'll need a few things for the child's treatment, and it would be good to have a nurse for the first 48 hours to monitor him." "Of course," he nodded, pulling out his phone. "I'll make the necessary calls." He left Victoria with the doctor and returned to the living room, where the other 3 children were still standing exactly where he had left them, afraid to move or touch anything. "Come with me," he invited them with a smile. "I'll show you where you can bathe, and then we'll have some dinner." He guided them to another bedroom, also spacious and elegant. "You can use this bathroom. There's hot water, shampoo, soap, everything you need. I'll find some clothes you can wear while we get new ones for you." Ethan looked at James seriously. "Sir, are you going to call CPS? Are they going to take us to a shelter?" The question, so direct and laden with fear, hit James like a slap. These children had learned to distrust the world, to always expect the worst. "No, Ethan, I won't call anyone who might separate you. I gave you my word, remember? As long as your mom doesn't show up, you'll all stay here together, and we'll do everything we can to find her." The boy studied him carefully, as if trying to read the truth in his eyes. He finally nodded slightly. "Good," James continued. "I'll arrange everything for dinner while you bathe. Do you need help?" "I can help them," Chloe said with surprising determination. "I always help David and Tommy with their bath when there's water in the neighborhood." "Perfect," James smiled, moved by the little girl's maturity. "I'll leave you to it then." While the children bathed, James made several calls. First, to a department store where he had an account to urgently send clothes for 5 children of various ages. Then to a nursing agency to hire someone to care for Tommy during the first few nights. Finally, he called his personal assistant. "Lisa, it's James. I need you to cancel all my commitments for tomorrow. I have a personal situation to attend to." The voice on the other end sounded concerned. "Is everything all right, Mr. Anderson? The meeting with the Japanese investors is very important." "I know, but it will have to wait. It's a family emergency." After hanging up, he headed to the kitchen. Fortunately, Miss Henderson always left prepared food in the refrigerator. He heated a pot of chicken broth with vegetables, made some cheese quesadillas, and took out fresh fruit. As he set the table, he heard laughter coming from the bathroom. The sound was so unusual in his solitary apartment that he paused for a moment to appreciate it. Children's laughter, innocent joy blooming even amidst the most difficult circumstances. Half an hour later, the 3 children appeared in the kitchen. They were unrecognizable, clean, with damp, shiny hair, wrapped in James's bathrobes that were enormous on them. Their faces, free of dirt, revealed delicate features and flushed cheeks that malnutrition and street life had dulled. "Smells delicious," David exclaimed, sniffing the air like a puppy. "Sit down," James invited them. "Dinner is ready." At that moment, Victoria joined them. She had also bathed and was wearing one of James's t-shirts that reached her knees. "The doctor will stay with Tommy," she reported. "She says his fever is going down." "Excellent news," James smiled. "Everyone come to dinner." The children sat at the table, marveling at the abundance of food. However, none dared to serve themselves until James encouraged them. Even then, they did so timidly, as if fearing someone might take the food away at any moment. "You can eat as much as you want," he encouraged them. "There's plenty more if you're still hungry." Little by little, the initial shyness gave way to real hunger. They devoured the quesadillas, slurped the broth noisily, and had several helpings. James watched them with a mixture of joy and sadness. How long had they gone without a decent meal? During dinner, he took the opportunity to get to know them better. "Victoria, can you tell me a little more about yourselves? Where did you live before the abandoned site?" The girl put down her spoon and looked at him with those old eyes in such a young face. "We lived in a cramped apartment in a subsidized housing complex," she explained. "We had a tiny room, but at least it had a solid roof and a bathroom shared with other families. But 3 months ago, Mom lost one of her jobs, and we couldn't pay the rent. The landlord kicked us out onto the street with our things." "And your dad?" James asked cautiously. "We don't have one," Ethan interjected with a certain harshness. "We never knew him. Mom says he left when we were born, Chloe added, pointing to her twin. She works all day to feed us, Victoria continued. She cleans houses, does laundry, sometimes sells small crafts at intersections. When she gets jobs far away, in the richer suburbs, sometimes she stays overnight because bus fare is too expensive to go back and forth. Do you know the names of the people she works for, or their addresses? Victoria frowned thoughtfully. I know one lady is named Mrs. Peterson. Mom goes to her house every Monday. She's a rich lady who lives in Forest Hill, but I don't know exactly where. That's a start, James encouraged her. Tomorrow we'll start looking for her. Don't worry. What if something bad happened to her? David asked with a trembling voice. The bad man always threatened her. The older siblings shot him, warning glances that didn't go unnoticed by James. What bad man, David? He asked gently. The boy lowered his gaze, scared of having said too much. No one, Ethan quickly interjected. David makes things up. James decided not to press. It was clear there was something the older siblings didn't want to share, some secret they considered dangerous or shameful. After dinner, packages of new clothes arrived. Pajamas, t-shirts, pants, socks, underwear, sneakers, and even some toys that James had included in the order. The children couldn't believe it was all for them. Can I really keep these sneakers? Ethan asked, holding a pair of athletic shoes as if they were made of gold. Of course, James smiled. They're yours. Chloe hugged a new doll, but hadn't let go of her old rag doll. The new doll can be Lucy's friend, she decided, referring to her battered toy. Meanwhile, the hired nurse had arrived and was settling into the room where Tommy rested. Doctor, Dubois gave her final instructions before leaving, promising to return the next day. The boy is responding well to the antibiotics, she informed James. If he continues like this, he'll be out of danger in 48 hours, but he'll need to complete the treatment and eat well. Thank you, doctor. I don't know how to thank you for coming so quickly. Don't thank me, James. What you're doing for these children is admirable. Few would have gotten involved like you. After the doctor left, James organized where everyone would sleep. Tommy would remain in the main guest bedroom with the nurse monitoring his sleep. Victoria insisted on sleeping on a sofa next to his bed. I always take care of him when he's sick, she explained with a mother's seriousness. He gets scared if he wakes up and doesn't see me. James prepared the other guest bedroom for the twins and Ethan. When everyone was settled, he toured the apartment, ensuring they were comfortable. He stopped at the door of the room where Tommy rested. Victoria had already fallen asleep on the sofa, overcome by the day's emotional exhaustion. He watched her for a moment. She was just a child, yet she carried responsibilities on her small shoulders that many adults couldn't bear. She cared for her siblings with fierce determination, like a lioness defending her cubs. Back in his bedroom, James couldn't fall asleep. His mind raced, processing everything that had happened in the last few hours. 5 children had suddenly entered his life, transforming it completely. What would he do now? How would he help find their mother? And if she didn't appear, he couldn't hand them over to the authorities, not after promising them they wouldn't be separated. He took from his nightstand a small frame with a photograph of a smiling elderly couple next to a skinny, serious teenager. They were Arthur and Helen Thompson, his adoptive parents, and himself, at 15, shortly after they took him in. What would you do in my place? He whispered to the photograph, as if it could give him answers. James, too, had been an abandoned child, raised in an orphanage until he was 13. He ran away after years of mistreatment. He lived on the streets of Toronto for almost 2 years, stealing to eat, sleeping wherever he could, distrusting everyone. Until Arthur Thompson, a retired university professor, found him rummaging through garbage behind a restaurant. Instead of calling the police, he took him home, offered him a hot meal, and eventually a home. I'm keeping my promise, James murmured, recalling Arthur's last words on his deathbed. Son, everything we gave you, give it back to the world when you find someone who needs it as much as you did. With that thought, he finally fell asleep. The next morning he was woken by an unusual sound. Children's laughter. For a moment he felt disoriented, until the events of the previous day returned to his memory. Stepping out of his bedroom, he found the twins sitting on the living room carpet watching cartoons on the enormous flat screen. Ethan stood by the window, gazing in awe at the cityscape spreading out before him. Good morning, James greeted. The children looked at him and responded timidly. Ethan approached, more serious than the others. Mr. Anderson, he began formally, can we go look for our mom today? I'm worried about her. Of course, Ethan. It's our priority. Let's have breakfast first, and then we'll organize the search. At that moment, Victoria came out of the room where she had spent the night. "Tommy is better," she announced with a radiant smile. His fever went down, and he was able to drink a little water. "The nurse says it's a good sign." The news cheered everyone. During breakfast, prepared by the surprised but efficient Miss Henderson, who had arrived early and found 5 children installed in her employer's apartment, James explained his plan. "I've contacted a private investigator who will help us find your mom. His name is Mark. He's very good at his job. He'll come later to talk to you and get all the information he can." "What if we don't find her?" Chloe asked in a small voice. "We will find her," James affirmed, with more confidence than he felt. "And in the meantime, you'll stay here with me. No one will separate you, I promise." After breakfast, while waiting for the investigator to arrive, James showed the children the rest of the apartment, including the terrace, with a garden and a small pool. The twins were fascinated, but Victoria seemed worried. "What's wrong, Victoria?" James asked, noticing her expression. "It's just that all this feels like a dream," she replied, "but dreams end. What will happen when we find Mom? Will we be homeless again? Hungry again?" The girl's concern was legitimate and heartbreaking. At barely 10 years old, she was already thinking like an adult, anticipating problems and seeking solutions. "Victoria," James said, crouching to look her in the eyes, "I promise you that won't happen. When we find your mom, I'll help you all have a decent home, a stable job for her. I won't abandon you after we find her." The girl looked at him intently, evaluating the sincerity of his words. Slowly, a small smile formed on her face. "I believe you," she simply said, and for some reason, that trust meant more to James than any multi-million-dollar contract he had ever signed. The elevator bell announced the arrival of Mark O'Connell, the private investigator. He was a man in his 50s, with a former cop look and a shrewd gaze that seemed to catalog everything he saw. "Mr. Anderson," he greeted formally. "Thanks for coming so quickly, Mark," James replied, leading him to the living room where the children waited. "These are Victoria, Ethan, Chloe, David, and little Tommy is in bed, recovering from pneumonia. Children, Mr. O'Connell is going to help us find your mom." The investigator sat down in front of the children and, with a surprising gentleness that contrasted with his rugged appearance, began to ask them questions about their mother. Full name, approximate age, physical appearance, places where she worked, friends or acquaintances, any detail that might be useful. "Her name is Eleanor Smith," Victoria informed him. "She's 32. She's thin like me but taller. She has long black hair down to here," she pointed to the middle of her back, "and a small scar on her right eyebrow from when she was a child." As Victoria provided these details, Mark took meticulous notes. Ethan added information about his mother's usual work hours and the names he remembered of some people she worked for. Even the twins contributed small details they recalled. "With this, I can start," Mark said after almost an hour of interviewing. "I'll begin with hospitals and clinics, then police stations. I'll also visit that subsidized housing complex in the downtown area. Maybe the neighbors know something." "Keep us constantly informed," James requested, "no matter the hour." After Mark left, James noticed Ethan looking at him with a strange expression, a mix of gratitude and distrust. "Is something wrong, Ethan?" he asked. The boy seemed to hesitate before speaking. "It's just that no one does all this for kids they don't even know. You must want something in return." The boy's frankness was painful, but understandable. In his short life, he had probably learned that nothing is free, that every favor has a price. "I understand, Ethan," James replied calmly. "In your place, I'd be suspicious too. But the truth is, I don't want anything in return. I'm just giving back what I received." And as he watched the children gradually begin to relax in this safe and comfortable environment, James knew he was doing the right thing. They would find Eleanor, the children's mother, and together they would build a better future for this family that destiny had placed in his path. The next morning dawned clear and bright over Toronto. The sun illuminated the glittering skyscrapers of the downtown core, creating a dramatic contrast with the serene waters of Lake Ontario. For James, however, the day began with a mission that overshadowed any negotiation or contract. Finding Eleanor Smith, the mother of 5 children who, in less than 48 hours, had completely transformed his ordered life as a successful bachelor. Tommy had had a good night. His fever had almost completely disappeared, and though still weak, he had been able to eat some oatmeal and orange juice that Miss Henderson specially prepared for him. The nurse, an experienced woman named Connie, was impressed with the little boy's recovery. "Children are amazing," she commented to James, while checking Tommy's vital signs. "They can be on the brink and bounce back like rubber balls." but this little one will need to continue with antibiotics and good nutrition. James had gotten up early to organize the day. His phone wouldn't stop ringing. Partners concerned about his absence, impatient clients, the legal team awaiting instructions on the contract with the Japanese investors. He had delegated the most urgent matters to Robert, his partner, vaguely explaining he had a family emergency. Family? Robert had asked, surprised. Since when do you have family, James? In the 10 years we've worked together, you've never mentioned relatives. It's complicated, was all James could reply. How could he explain that he had picked up 5 children from the street and now felt an almost paternal responsibility towards them? By mid-morning, Mark O'Connell called with the first news. Mr. Anderson, I have a lead. A woman matching Eleanor Smith's description was admitted to Toronto General Hospital 3 days ago. Workplace accident, no identification. James's heart skipped a beat. Are you sure it's her? Not 100%. That's why I need the oldest girl to come identify her. Can you bring Victoria to the hospital? James looked towards the living room, where the children were drawing with notebooks and colored pencils that Miss Henderson had bought for them. Victoria was helping Chloe color within the lines with infinite patience. We'll be there in an hour, he replied. When he explained the situation to Victoria, the girl visibly paled. Is my mom hurt? She asked with a trembling voice. We don't know if it's her, Victoria. And if it is, the doctors are taking good care of her, but we need you to see her to be sure. Victoria nodded with determination. Let's go, right now. They decided not to unnecessarily alarm the other children. James explained that he was taking Victoria to run some errands to look for their mom and that they would be back soon. Ethan, always suspicious, seemed to want to protest, but finally nodded, understanding the need to protect the younger ones from potentially bad news. The drive to Toronto General Hospital, located in the downtown core, was silent. Victoria looked out the window of the Mercedes, her small hands clasped in her lap. James respected her silence, understanding the storm of emotions she must have been experiencing. Everything will be all right, he said softly when they stopped at a traffic light. No matter what happens, you're not alone. The girl looked at him with those large, serious eyes that seemed to belong to someone much older. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. You're like an angel who fell from the sky when we needed it most. The hospital was an old, but well-maintained building, with crowded corridors. The public healthcare system, always stretched thin, showed its most human, and at the same time most desperate face. Entire families waiting for news. Rush doctors running back and forth, the characteristic smell of disinfectant mixed with medicine. Mark was waiting for them at the entrance. He greeted them soberly and crouched down to speak with Victoria. Hello, little one. We're going to see a lady who's admitted. It might be your mom, or it might not. She's a bit hurt, so don't be scared when you see her. Okay? Victoria nodded with the courage that characterized every one of her actions. They went up to the 3rd floor, where a nurse was waiting to guide them down a long corridor to a common ward with 6 beds, barely separated by curtains. In the last bed, by the window, lay a woman in her early 30s. Her face was partially swollen and bruised. A bandage covered her head, and her right arm was in a cast. She was connected to an IV drip, and a heart monitor emitted regular beeps. Her eyes were closed. Victoria advanced slowly towards the bed. James and Mark stayed a few steps behind, giving her space. The girl carefully observed the woman and, without warning, thick tears began to roll down her cheeks. It's her, she whispered, her voice breaking. It's my mom. She moved closer and with infinite tenderness touched her mother's free hand. Mommy, she called softly. It's me, Victoria. To everyone's surprise, the woman slightly moved her fingers, as if responding to the touch. A doctor passing by stopped, interested in the scene. Do you know the patient? He asked. She's my mother, Victoria replied, without taking her eyes off Eleanor's bruised face. What happened to her? Is she going to be okay? The doctor checked the file hanging at the foot of the bed. She's the woman from the accident at the Montemayor's house, he murmured, more to himself than to them. Then, addressing Victoria with professional kindness, he explained, Your mom suffered a fall from a 2nd-story window while cleaning. She has a traumatic brain injury, 3 fractured ribs, and a broken right arm. We performed surgery to reduce pressure on her brain, and now we're waiting for her to wake up naturally. And when will she wake up? Victoria insisted. The doctor exchanged a glance with James before responding. We can't know for sure, little one. It could be today, tomorrow, or take longer. The brain needs to heal at its own pace. James approached and placed a hand on Victoria's shoulder. Can we stay with her? You can stay for a brief visit now, the doctor replied. Official visiting hours are from 4 to 6 p.m., but as this is a special situation, I'll make an exception. Victoria didn't let go of her mother's hand throughout the visit. She spoke to her in a low voice, telling her that her siblings were fine, that they were all together in a safe place, that a very kind man was taking care of them. James took the opportunity to speak with the doctor privately. After properly introducing himself, he learned that Eleanor was still in critical, but stable, condition. The traumatic brain injury was serious, and the next 48 hours would be decisive. Doctor, I'd like to transfer her to Mount Sinai Hospital, James said, mentioning Toronto's best private clinic. I will cover all expenses. The doctor seemed relieved. It would be best for her, no doubt. Here, we do what we can. But there, she will have personalized care and the best specialists. I'll arrange everything for first thing tomorrow, James assured him. When he returned to Victoria, he found her stroking her mother's hair with infinite tenderness. Victoria, he called softly, we have to go now. We'll come back tomorrow, I promise. The girl nodded reluctantly, leaned over her mother, and kissed her cheek. I'm going to take care of the children, Mommy. You just worry about getting well. We love you very much. On the way back to the apartment, Victoria was quieter than ever. James respected her silence, understanding that she needed to process everything she was experiencing. Only when they were about to arrive did the girl speak. My mom works very hard for us, she said, her voice barely audible. Sometimes she has 3 different jobs in one day. She always says we're the most important thing to her, that she does everything so we can have a better future. She paused. But now she's so hurt. Your mom is a very brave woman, James replied, and you are just like her. She'll get well, Victoria, and in the meantime, I'll make sure you are all well cared for. Are you going to tell my siblings that we found her? Tommy is too little to understand, but the twins will start crying. And Ethan will want to go to the hospital right away. I think they deserve to know the truth, but we can explain it in a way that doesn't scare them too much. How about we do it together? Victoria nodded, silently grateful that he shared that responsibility with her. In the apartment, the children received them anxious for news. James and Victoria carefully explained that they had found their mom, that she was in the hospital because she had had a workplace accident, but that the doctors were taking very good care of her. As expected, there were tears. Chloe cried silently, clutching her rag doll. David asked many questions that Victoria patiently answered. Ethan, true to his reserved nature, barely reacted visibly, but the tension in his jaw betrayed his concern. Can we go see her? He finally asked. Tomorrow, James promised. Tomorrow she'll be transferred to a better hospital, where she'll have a private room, and we can all visit her. The rest of the day passed in a strange normality. The children, despite their concern for their mother, couldn't help but enjoy the comforts of the apartment, the abundant food, the security it provided them. James watched them, marveling at their adaptability. In just 2 days, they had gone from living in inhumane conditions to behaving almost naturally in a luxurious environment. That night, after putting the children to bed, James locked himself in his study to make calls. First, to his lawyer Frank Miller, to consult him about the children's legal situation. It's complicated, James, Frank explained after hearing the whole story. Without formal authorization from the mother, you have no legal rights over these children. If the authorities find out, Child Protective Services will most likely place them in state custody while she recovers. That's precisely what I want to avoid, James replied. These children have been through enough trauma already. Separating them now would be cruel. I understand, but the law is clear. We need the mother to sign a document granting you temporary custody. And if she's unconscious? What if I can get a judge to approve it? I have contacts. We could try, Frank conceded, but we'd need to demonstrate that the children are better off with you than in a CPS shelter, and that you have some bond with them that justifies custody. Prepare the documents, James decided. We'll find a way. The next call was to Mount Sinai Hospital to arrange Eleanor's transfer. As president of one of the country's most important development companies, James Anderson's name opened doors. Within minutes, everything was arranged to move Eleanor to a private suite first thing the next morning. Finally, he called his assistant Lisa. Lisa, I need you to cancel all my commitments for the rest of the week. The whole week? The surprise in his efficient assistant's voice was evident. In 10 years of working together, James had never taken more than 1 day off in a row. Is everything all right, Mr. Anderson? Yes, but I have a personal situation that requires my full attention. Robert can handle the most urgent matters. Anything that needs my signature, send it by messenger to my apartment. After hanging up, James poured himself a whiskey and went out onto the terrace. The city stretched beneath him, a sea of flickering lights against the black backdrop of the night. Somewhere in that city, thousands of children, like Victoria and her siblings, struggled to survive, invisible to most. How many times had he himself passed by them without truly seeing them? A slight noise pulled him from his reflections. Victoria was at the terrace door, her hair loose and dressed in the new pajamas they had bought her. "Can't you sleep?" James asked softly. She shook her head. "I have a lot on my mind. Come, sit with me." The girl settled into the chair next to him, pulling her knees to her chest in a gesture of self-protection that broke James's heart. "Do you think my mom will wake up?" The question, so direct and so full of fear, took James by surprise. What could he tell her? Lie to console her? Tell her the harsh truth that no one could know for certain? "Your mom is a fighter, Victoria. She's raised 5 children on her own. She's worked tirelessly to care for them. Someone with that strength doesn't give up easily." The answer seemed to satisfy Victoria, who nodded thoughtfully. "Can I ask you something, Mr. Anderson?" "Anything you want. You said someone helped you when you were a child. What happened to you? Why did you need help?" James took a sip of whiskey, considering how much to reveal. He finally decided that Victoria deserved the truth. "My parents abandoned me when I was just a few months old. I grew up in an orphanage until I was 13, but it wasn't a good place. They treated us badly. Sometimes they hit us or left us without food as punishment. So I ran away and lived on the streets for almost 2 years. Victoria's eyes widened. It was hard to imagine that this elegant, powerful man had once been a street kid. "And how did you get rich?" James smiled at the direct question. "It wasn't overnight. One day, a retired university professor, Arthur Thompson, found me rummaging through the garbage behind a restaurant. Instead of chasing me away, he invited me to eat. Afterwards, he offered me a place to sleep just for that night," he said. "But that night turned into a week, and the week into a month. Eventually, he and his wife Helen legally adopted me." "And they gave you all this?" Victoria gestured, encompassing the luxurious apartment. "Not exactly. They gave me something much more valuable. Education, values, unconditional love. They sent me to school, then to university. When I graduated with a civil engineering degree, I worked for other construction companies until I could start my own firm. Arthur and Helen weren't rich, but they taught me that with education and hard work, I could build my own path." Victoria absorbed every word, as if memorizing a vital lesson. "I want to study too," she declared, with determination. "I want to be a doctor to heal people like my mom, and I want to earn money so my siblings never go hungry again. That's a noble goal, Victoria, and I'm sure you'll achieve it." They talked a little longer under the stars until Victoria's eyelids began to close. James walked her to her improvised room next to Tommy, who was sleeping deeply, now without any traces of fever. "Thanks for telling me your story," Victoria murmured, already half asleep. "It gives me hope." The next morning brought a whirlwind of activity. Eleanor's transfer to Mount Sinai Hospital was scheduled for 9 a.m., and James wanted everything to go perfectly. He had hired a private ambulance with full medical equipment to ensure the journey was safe. The children were nervous and excited at the same time. Miss Henderson helped them get dressed in the best clothes they had bought and even styled their hair with special care. They wanted to look nice for their mum, even if she couldn't see them yet. At Mount Sinai Hospital, everything was ready. A spacious, bright room with a state-of-the-art hospital bed, advanced monitoring equipment, even floral arrangements to make the environment more welcoming. The neurologist, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, and his team awaited the patient's arrival to evaluate her immediately. When the ambulance arrived with Eleanor, the children waited anxiously in the family lounge next to the room. James had preferred that they not see the transfer process, which could be upsetting. Only when Eleanor was settled, connected to the monitors, and checked by the doctors, did he allow them to enter 2 by 2 to see her briefly. Victoria and Ethan were the first. Despite being prepared for what they would see, Ethan couldn't help but show a look of shock at seeing his mother so vulnerable, so different from the strong, hard-working woman he knew. Victoria, who had already seen her the day before, took her brother's hand to give him courage. "Hi, Mom," Ethan said with a trembling voice. "It's Victoria and me. The others are outside waiting to see you. We're doing well. Don't worry about us. Mr. Anderson is taking care of us." The twins entered next, accompanied by James. Chloe carried her rag doll. "I brought Lucy for Mom," the girl said, carefully placing the doll next to Eleanor's pillow, "to take care of you until you get better and come home with us." David simply stared at his mother with wide eyes, without saying a word. Finally, he approached and gave her a kiss on the cheek. "We love you, Mom," he whispered. "Get well soon." Tommy was the last to enter, accompanied by Victoria. Although still weak from pneumonia, he had insisted on seeing his mom. At first, he seemed confused, seeing Eleanor asleep and connected to so many machines. "Why isn't Mom waking up?" he asked in his high-pitched voice. "Is she very tired?" "Yes, Tommy," Victoria replied gently. "Mommy is very tired and needs to sleep to heal, but she can hear us, so you can talk to her." The little boy cautiously approached the bed. "Mommy, it's me, Tommy. I'm not sick anymore, and we're in a very nice house with a good man. There are toys and yummy food, but we miss you very much." After the visits, Dr. Gupta spoke with James in his office. The prognosis was cautiously optimistic. Eleanor was stable, her vital signs were good, and though still unconscious, there were small positive signs. "The brain is unpredictable," the doctor explained, "but she's young and previously healthy, which works in her favor. The next 72 hours will be crucial. And if she wakes up, what can we expect?" James asked. "It's hard to know until it happens. She could have some degree of amnesia, confusion, personality changes, or she could wake up and be practically as before, just sore from the fractures. Each case is unique." Back at the apartment, the children were unusually quiet. The hospital visit had deeply impacted them, making them confront the gravity of their mother's situation. Even the twins, normally restless, were subdued. During the meal, David broke the silence with a question he had evidently been pondering for some time. "If Mom doesn't wake up, what will happen to us?" 5 pairs of eyes fixed on James, awaiting an answer that would dispel their worst fears. "Your mom is going to wake up," he replied firmly. "She has the best doctors taking care of her. But no matter what happens, I promise you'll be together and safe. I won't let anyone separate you or let you go through hardship again." It was a risky promise, considering what his lawyer had explained about the fragile legal situation. But seeing David's shoulders relax and Victoria nod with renewed confidence, he knew it was a promise he was determined to keep, no matter the obstacles. 3 days after Eleanor's hospitalization, a routine began to establish itself in James's penthouse. The children, adapting with that amazing capacity only childhood possesses, had begun to move around the apartment with increasing familiarity. Tommy was now fully recovered from pneumonia, scurrying everywhere with the inexhaustible energy of his 4 years. The twins had discovered the collection of children's movies on the streaming platform and spent hours fascinated in front of the giant screen. Even Ethan, always the most cautious and reserved, began to let his guard down, especially after James gave him a tablet where he could draw digitally. Victoria, as always, was the most mature. She had become Miss Henderson's right hand in the kitchen, asking her about recipes and helping her prepare food for her siblings. The connection between the girl and the elderly cook had been instantaneous, as if Victoria had found the grandmother figure she never had. For James, this new life as an impromptu father represented a daily challenge, but also a satisfaction he had never known before. He had reduced his workday to the bare minimum, delegating responsibilities to his partners so he could be present with the children. Every morning and every evening, they visited Eleanor in the hospital, taking turns sitting next to her, talking to her, telling her how their day had gone, hoping their voices would reach her through the fog of unconsciousness. Dr. Gupta remained moderately optimistic. Eleanor's vital signs were constantly improving, and the CT scans showed that the brain inflammation was decreasing. "It's a matter of time," he repeated during each visit. "The brain has its own rhythm to heal." But there was another matter James couldn't keep postponing: the children's education. None of them had attended school regularly in recent months since losing their home. This interruption in their schooling was as detrimental as the lack of adequate nutrition had been. One morning after breakfast, he gathered the children in the living room to discuss the matter. "I was thinking it's time for you to go back to school," he announced, observing their reactions. "I've been looking into some nearby options." The twins looked at each other with uncertain expressions. Ethan frowned. Only Victoria nodded enthusiastically. "I'd like to go back to school," she said. "I used to be good at math. My teacher said I could be an engineer someday." "And how would we go?" Ethan asked. "Ever practical. We don't have uniforms or backpacks or anything. I'll take care of that," James replied. "I'll buy you everything you need. The important thing is that you resume your studies as soon as possible. What if the other kids make fun of us?" David's question reflected a fear they probably all shared. "At our old school, they bothered us for being poor." James felt a pang of sadness. He himself had lived that experience when, After years in the orphanage and on the streets, he began attending a private school thanks to his adoptive parents. He vividly remembered the looks of disdain, the whispers behind his back, the constant feeling of not belonging. "We'll find a school where that won't happen," he asserted, though he knew he couldn't fully guarantee it. A place where they value each student for who they are, not for what they have. That same afternoon, after the hospital visit, James took Victoria and Ethan to see two schools he had pre-selected. The first was the prestigious Upper Canada College, one of Toronto's most exclusive private schools. The building, with its imposing modern colonial architecture and extensive sports fields, visibly intimidated the children from the moment they crossed the entrance gates. The principal, a woman in her 50s wearing an impeccable pantsuit, received them in her office decorated with diplomas and accolades. "Upper Canada College has been educating Toronto's elite for 65 years, she explained, as she showed them the facilities. "Our graduates attend the best universities in the world. We have advanced science labs, classes in 3 languages from preschool, and an internationally recognized arts program." As they walked through the spacious corridors, Victoria and Ethan walked in silence, clearly overwhelmed. The students they passed, all in impeccable uniforms and confident demeanor, cast curious glances at them, making Ethan visibly tense. Back in the car, James asked for their impressions. "It's very nice," Victoria said diplomatically, "but I don't think we're like them." Ethan was more direct. "They won't accept us there, Mr. Anderson. You can tell they're rich kids who've never been hungry. They'll make our lives miserable." James nodded, understanding perfectly. "Let's look at the other option then." The second school was Northwood Community School, a smaller, less ostentatious institution, but with a progressive educational philosophy. It was located in a middle-class residential area in a modest but well-maintained building, with colorful murals on the exterior walls. The principal, Miss Emily Carter, a young woman with contagious energy, greeted them informally in an inner courtyard full of plants. "At Northwood, we believe every child has unique potential," she explained as she showed them the facilities. "Our goal is to foster not only academic knowledge, but also empathy, creativity, and critical thinking." What most caught Victoria and Ethan's attention was the diversity among the students. There were children from different backgrounds, some clearly from affluent families, others from middle class, some with indigenous features, even a child in a wheelchair playing adaptive basketball in the courtyard. "Here we have an integration program, Miss Carter explained, noticing their interest. 15% of our students come from vulnerable backgrounds on full scholarships. We believe everyone is enriched when they learn together, regardless of their origin." During the visit, a girl approximately Victoria's age spontaneously approached to introduce herself. "Hi, I'm Danielle. Are you going to study here?" The simple but warm gesture seemed to break the ice. Victoria smiled for the first time since the visits began. "We don't know yet. We're just looking around." Upon returning to the car, the contrast with the previous visit was evident. Both Victoria and Ethan seemed more relaxed, even enthusiastic. "I like that school," Ethan confessed. "It doesn't seem like they judge you by how you look or where you come from." "The girl Danielle was very kind," Victoria added. "And they have a really cool science lab." James smiled, satisfied with the reaction. "Northwood Community School it is then." Both nodded enthusiastically. "But what if Mom wakes up and doesn't like it?" Victoria asked, always considering all possibilities. "We'll talk to her when she wakes up," James replied. "But I think she'll agree it's a good option for you." Over the following days, James took care of all the enrollment procedures. He bought uniforms, backpacks, school supplies, and everything necessary for the 5 children. Tommy would go to preschool, the twins to 2nd grade, Ethan to 4th, and Victoria to 5th. Principal Carter had been exceptionally understanding of the situation, agreeing to enroll them mid-school year and arranging evaluations to determine if they would need additional support to catch up. The evening before the first day of school, James noticed Victoria was unusually quiet. He found her on the terrace, gazing thoughtfully towards the city skyline. "Nervous about tomorrow?" he asked, sitting beside her. "A little," she admitted. "What if I can't keep up with the classes? I haven't been to school in so long. Principal Carter already knows that. They'll give you time to adapt and extra support if you need it. Besides, you're very smart, Victoria. You'll do fine." The girl smiled weakly, but her concern was evident. "You know what?" James continued. "When my adoptive parents enrolled me in my first real school after years on the streets, I was terrified. The night before, I couldn't even sleep. Really? Yes. And the first day was hard. I felt like an alien among the other kids. But do you know what I learned? That our past doesn't define who we can become. What's important are the decisions we make from now on. Victoria nodded, absorbing his words with that intensity that characterized her. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. I think I'll be okay. The morning of the first school day was a whirlwind of activity in the penthouse. Miss Henderson prepared a special breakfast with pancakes, fresh fruit, and hot chocolate. The children dressed in their new uniforms, navy blue pants, white shirts with the school logo, burgundy sweaters, and shiny black shoes. Seeing them like this, transformed by clean clothes and the day's anticipation, stirred an unexpected emotion in James. They looked like completely different children from those he had found at the abandoned site just a week ago. Months of deprivation had hidden their true essence. Bright, curious children, full of potential. Photo time to remember this day, he announced, pulling out his phone. The five posed by the panoramic window with the city as a backdrop. They smiled shyly for the camera, except Tommy, who made a funny face, sticking out his tongue. "We'll show this photo to your mom when she wakes up," James said. "She'll be very proud of you." In the car on the way to school, the nerves were palpable. Even Ethan, normally so stoic, showed signs of anxiety, drumming his fingers on his new backpack. The twins, on the other hand, were more excited than worried, asking endless questions about their new teacher and if there would be recess for playtime. Principal Carter was waiting for them at the school entrance to personally welcome them. With natural warmth, she introduced herself to each child, crouching to be at the level of the youngest ones. "Tommy, you'll be in the sunflower classroom with Miss Pauline," she explained, taking the youngest's hand. "Chloe and David, you'll be in grade 2B with Mr. Robert. Ethan, your class is grade 4A with Miss Jane, and Victoria, you'll be in grade 5C with Miss Alexandra." James watched as each child was guided to their respective classroom. Victoria was the last to leave, turning once more to look at him with a mixture of apprehension and determination. He gave her a thumbs up, encouraging her. "I'll be here promptly at dismissal," he promised. "Good luck on your first day." Once alone, James experienced a strange mix of emotions: pride, worry, and something deeper he couldn't name. Was this how parents felt dropping their children off at school? This new, unexpected facet of his life was revealing aspects of himself he had never explored. He used his free hours to visit Eleanor in the hospital. Sitting beside her bed, he told her about the children's first day of school, describing in detail how they looked in their new uniforms, how nervous but excited they were. He showed her the photo he had taken that morning. "You'd be so proud of them, Eleanor," he told her, though he didn't know if she could hear him. "They are extraordinary children. You've done an incredible job raising them, especially considering such difficult circumstances. Victoria is so responsible, so mature for her age. Ethan has a natural talent for drawing. You should see what he creates on the tablet I gave him. The twins are pure energy and joy. And Tommy, well, it's a miracle how he recovered from that pneumonia." As he spoke, he noticed a subtle change in the monitors. Eleanor's heart rate accelerated slightly, as if she were reacting to his words. James gently squeezed her hand. "Can you hear me, Eleanor? If you can, squeeze my hand." For a tense moment, nothing happened. Then, almost imperceptibly, he felt a slight pressure on his fingers. It was so faint he might have imagined it, but his heart quickened with hope. He immediately called Dr. Gupta, who came at once to examine the patient. After several tests, he confirmed what James suspected. "She's starting to respond to external stimuli. It's an excellent sign. She might be beginning the awakening process, though it can still take time." With that renewed hope, James returned to the school to pick up the children. He found them waiting for him in the main courtyard, each with different expressions revealing how their day had gone. Tommy ran to him as soon as he saw him, hugging his legs. "I made a drawing for Mom," he exclaimed, proudly showing him a paper full of colorful scribbles. The twins also seemed happy. Chloe had made friends with another girl in her class, and David was excited because the teacher had promised a soccer class for the next day. Ethan looked more reserved, but not displeased. "The art teacher said I draw really well," he commented timidly when James asked him about his day. Victoria was the last to approach. Her expression was hard to interpret. "How was your day?" James asked, slightly concerned. A slow smile spread across the girl's face. "Very good, Miss. Alexandra says I have a knack for math. She gave me some special exercises to see how far I can go." In the car, the children all spoke at once, sharing anecdotes from their day. New friendships, teachers, facilities. It was as if a dam had broken, releasing all the emotion contained during class hours. "My classroom has a turtle named Donatello," David exclaimed. "My teacher plays the guitar and taught us a song," Chloe recounted. "In art class, we used real paints, not like the cheap crayons at the other school," Ethan added. James listened to them all, interjecting questions, genuinely interested in every detail. Upon arriving at the apartment, he had a surprise waiting for them. "Before we go up, I have some important news," he announced. The children looked at him expectantly. "I visited your mom this morning, and there are signs that she might be starting to wake up." Their faces lit up with hope. "Really?" Victoria asked, her eyes shining. "The doctor says she's responding to stimuli. I even think she squeezed my hand when I spoke to her. It's a slow process, but it's a good sign." The news further lifted the children's spirits. Dinner that night was especially lively, with everyone sharing what they would tell their mother when she woke up. After putting the little ones to bed, James found Victoria in the living room, looking out at the city skyline again. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, sitting beside her. "How everything has changed so quickly," the girl replied. "Just a week ago, we were at that abandoned site with Tommy sick, no food, no hope. And now we're here in this beautiful place, going to an amazing school, with Mom getting better in the hospital." "Life sometimes takes unexpected turns," James reflected. "Yes, but almost always they were bad turns for us," Victoria said with wisdom beyond her years. "This is the first time luck has changed in our favor." "It's not luck, Victoria. You deserve all the good things that are happening. You always deserved it." The girl looked at him with those deep eyes that seemed to see directly into his soul. "You also deserve good things, Mr. Anderson, like having a family, even if it's a borrowed family like us." Victoria's words resonated with James throughout the night. A borrowed family. Yes, that's what these children were. To him, an unexpected gift that had filled his previously solitary existence with life and purpose. And he realized, as he drifted off to sleep, that he could no longer imagine his life without them. 6 months had passed in a blink since that day James found Victoria asking for food in front of the upscale restaurant. Winter had given way to spring, and spring to Toronto's warm summer. In that time, everyone's lives had changed in ways none could have imagined. It was Sunday morning, and the sun shone brightly over Maplewood Heights, a quiet middle-class residential neighborhood where the Smith family now lived. The house, a 2-story construction with a front garden and a backyard, was filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the laughter of children playing outside. James arrived punctually, as he did every Sunday, carrying bags with croissants and maple tarts from the best bakery in the city and some gifts for the children. As soon as he rang the doorbell, he heard hurried footsteps approaching the door. "Uncle Jim!" exclaimed Tommy, now a healthy and vibrant boy of almost 5, opening the door with enthusiasm. There was no trace left of the feverish, malnourished little boy he had met at the abandoned site. "Champ," James greeted, lifting him into his arms. "How are you? Have you been good?" "Yes. And look, I barely have any teeth left," the boy replied, proudly showing the gaps where his baby teeth used to be. Inside the house, the rest of the family awaited him. The twins, Chloe and David, now 7, ran to greet him, followed more discreetly by Ethan, who at 9 years old tried to maintain a more mature demeanor, though the smile on his face at seeing James betrayed his joy. Victoria, who had just turned 11, came out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron. Her transformation was perhaps the most remarkable. She was no longer that distrustful, frightened girl, but a self-assured preteen, with her hair neatly braided and a radiant smile. "Good morning, Mr. Anderson," she greeted formally, though she couldn't resist giving him a quick hug. "Mom is just finishing getting ready. She says she'll be down in a moment." "No rush," James replied, handing her the bags. "I brought croissants and maple tarts from the Queen's Bakery, your mom's favorites." "Great. I made hot chocolate to go with them. Can you help me set the table?" Victoria asked her siblings, who immediately obeyed, clearly excited about the Sunday feast. While the children organized breakfast, James scanned the living room, appreciating the subtle changes since his last visit. There were new frames with family photographs on the walls, freshly hung curtains in cheerful tones, and a small blooming cactus on the windowsill. Small details that transformed a house into a home. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps on the stairs. Eleanor Smith descended with that quiet grace that characterized her. At 33, she was a beautiful woman, with delicate features and expressive eyes that reflected a lifetime of struggles. The only visible trace of her terrible accident was a faint scar on her right eyebrow that strangely gave her a distinguished air. "James, it's good to see you," she greeted with a warm smile. Always so punctual. Good morning, Eleanor. You look wonderful. And it was true. The contrast between the woman who had woken up after 2 weeks in a coma and the one standing before him now was astonishing. Physically, she had fully recovered, but the change went far beyond that. There was a serenity in her, a confidence that only comes when a person can finally stop living in constant survival mode. How's everything at the office? She asked as she guided him towards the dining room, where the children had already arranged everything for breakfast. Very well. Lisa says you're the best administrative assistant she's ever had. You're a quick learner. Eleanor smiled, a slight blush on her cheeks. The job at James's company, which had initially been a way to help her, had become a genuine professional opportunity. She started with simple tasks while recovering, but her natural intelligence and dedication had led her to rise quickly. I love my job, she confessed. I never thought I could do something like this. I always believed cleaning houses was all I was good for. Sunday breakfast unfolded as always, filled with laughter, school anecdotes, and plans for the week. It was a tradition that had naturally established itself after Eleanor and the children moved into their new house 3 months ago. James never missed it, and these moments had become the anchor of his week, no matter how busy he was with his businesses. I have news, Victoria announced when they were already having coffee and hot chocolate. Miss Alexandra says I should take the Math Olympiad exam. She thinks I have a chance to make it to the nationals. That's wonderful, my love, Eleanor exclaimed, hugging her daughter with pride. See? I told you were brilliant, James added, equally proud. Victoria's talent for math and science had fully blossomed in these months, exceeding all expectations. And I'm going to be in the school art exhibition, Ethan interjected shyly, as if not wanting to be left behind. The teacher chose 3 of my drawings, and I'm going to sing in the choir, Chloe added. And I scored 2 goals in yesterday's game. David didn't want to be outdone. And I can count to 20, exclaimed Tommy, making everyone laugh. James watched them, amazed by their transformation. Each of these children, who were once on the brink, now blossomed like well-tended plants. They had quickly adapted to their new life, to school, to the neighborhood, and most importantly, they maintained that strong family bond that had kept them together through the worst times. After breakfast, while the children played in the backyard, James and Eleanor sat on the porch with a second cup of coffee. It was a moment they both cherished, a space for adult conversations, away from children's ears. I received the results of the last exams, Eleanor commented. The neurologist says I'm fully recovered. No permanent sequelae. That's excellent news, James replied sincerely. All thanks to you. Eleanor briefly placed her hand on his. I can never thank you enough for what you did for us. You didn't just save my life, you saved my entire family. James gently shook his head. You would have done the same for any vulnerable child. Besides, he paused, searching for the right words. You gave me as much as I gave you, maybe more. Eleanor looked at him, inviting him to continue. Before I met you, my life was empty, he confessed. I had financial success, professional respect, but every night I returned to a silent apartment, where the echo of my own footsteps was my only company. You taught me what truly matters. Eleanor nodded understandingly. In these months, she had come to know this extraordinary man well. She knew of his childhood in the orphanage, his time on the streets, his late adoption. She understood that, in some way, by helping her children, James had also healed parts of his own past. By the way, she said, changing the subject slightly, Victoria told me about your idea, the foundation for street children. It sounds wonderful. James smiled. It was a project that had been born directly from his experience with the Smiths, a foundation dedicated to identifying talented children in vulnerable situations and providing them with education, psychological support, and opportunities they would otherwise never have. We already have the legal statutes, he explained. Next week, we'll sign the official constitution. I'd like you to be part of the board of directors, if you're interested. Eleanor's eyes widened in surprise. Me? But I don't have experience in something like that. You have something more valuable. You know firsthand the real needs of these families. You know what works and what doesn't, because you've lived it. Eleanor considered the proposal. I'd love to participate. Excellent. The official inauguration will be in a month. In fact, James paused, slightly nervous. I'd like Victoria to give a small speech that day. Her story can inspire many. I'm sure she'll accept. She loves the spotlight. Eleanor laughed. Sometimes I think that girl could run the country someday with that determination she has. The conversation flowed naturally towards future plans. The possibility of Ethan attending a special art course during the summer, swimming lessons for the twins, bilingual preschool for Tommy next year. Sometimes I pinch myself to make sure I'm not dreaming, Eleanor confessed. It was so recently we were living on the streets, without hope. And now you're building the future you always deserved, James completed. And it's just the beginning. After lunch, while Eleanor prepared coffee, James took the opportunity to speak privately with Victoria about the foundation's inauguration. As her mother had predicted, the girl excitedly accepted the invitation to give a speech. I was thinking, James said, that perhaps you could be our first youth ambassador, someone who represents the foundation at school events, who talks to other children about the importance of education, who helps identify cases similar to yours. Do you think I can do it? Victoria asked, her eyes shining at the possibility. I'm completely sure. You have a natural gift for connecting with people and expressing yourself clearly. You'd be perfect for the role. The afternoon advanced lazily, as Sundays often do. James helped Ethan with a science project. He played soccer with David in the yard, patiently listened to Chloe practice a song on her recorder, and built a pillow fort with Tommy. They were simple, precious moments, so different from the solitary Sundays he used to spend. As the sun began to set, painting the Toronto sky in shades of orange and purple, it was time to say goodbye. As always, the children protested, wanting him to stay longer. Uncle Jim, stay for dinner, Chloe insisted, pulling his hand. Yeah, Mom made noodle soup, your favorite, David added temptingly. I'm sorry, little ones, but tomorrow I have an important meeting early. James apologized. But I'll see you on Tuesday to take you to school, remember? I have to get to the office early tomorrow to prepare everything. Eleanor walked him to the door, while the children waved goodbye with hugs and promises of drawings and surprises for his next visit. Thanks for coming, as always, Eleanor said when they were finally alone on the porch. The children wait all week for Sunday. Me too, James admitted with a smile. It's the best part of my week. There was a moment of comfortable silence between them. That kind of silence that only exists between people who have traversed deep waters together. I almost forgot, James said, taking an envelope from his jacket. I wanted to give you this personally. Eleanor took the envelope with curiosity. Opening it, she found legal documents. She examined them for a moment, and her expression changed from confusion to surprise. James, what is this? It's the deed to the house, he explained. It's in your name now, fully paid off. Eleanor looked at him stunned. But I thought we were paying rent with an option to buy, that we would eventually purchase it. That was the initial plan, but I decided to speed things up. Consider it an investment in the children's future, a stable, owned place from which no one can ever evict them. Eleanor tried to speak, but emotion choked her throat. Her eyes filled with tears. I don't know what to say. This is too much. Don't say anything, James replied softly. Just promise me you'll continue to be the extraordinary mother you are, and that you'll let me continue to be a part of your lives. Always, she promised, wiping away a tear. Your family, James. You have been since the moment you picked up Victoria in front of that restaurant. Family. The word resonated in James's heart like a bell. For so many years, he had sought success, accumulating material wealth, buildings, multi-million-dollar contracts. And in the end, he had found the most valuable thing where he least expected it in a barefoot girl, asking for food, not for herself, but for her sick brother. When James finally said goodbye and got into his car, he saw the entire family on the porch in his rearview mirror, waving goodbye, a family that destiny had placed in his path, one that had taught him the true meaning of wealth. As he started the engine, he recalled his adoptive father's words before he died. Son, the true measure of a man is not in what he accumulates for himself, but in what he shares with others. For the first time, he felt he truly understood those words. He made a decision as he drove back to his apartment. The following week, in addition to signing the documents for the foundation, he would call his lawyer to modify his will. The 5 Smith children would be included as his heirs, ensuring their educational and financial future, no matter what. He wouldn't tell Eleanor yet. She was too proud to accept it easily. But with time, he would make her understand that he wasn't doing it out of charity, but out of a much deeper, more personal feeling, because those 5 children, whom he had met in the most improbable circumstances, had transformed his definition of success and fulfillment. As the house faded from view, James thought about how quickly the week would pass until next Sunday, and he smiled because, for the first time in his adult life, he had something he looked forward to with genuine joy. being with his family again, a family not bound by blood, but by something much stronger: love, gratitude, and the silent promise to always be there, no matter what.